Hi, everyone, and welcome to Word to Us, a podcast by a Black first-gen female student for Black first-gen female students. My name is Kyla-Journey, and I'll be your host for this limited series talking about the taboo topics within the Black community. Now, just because I created this podcast for Black first-gen female students doesn't mean they're the only ones that can listen to this podcast. The topics I plan on covering with this series can apply to any and everyone. I know what it's like to look for a community that caters to the intersection of my identities, and I'd like to carve out a space catered to Black women created by one. Trust me, if you've been through it, there's a chance someone else has too. On today's episode, I'm joined by special guest Melanie. So me and Mel have known each other, let me do math, like 6 years? 6 years feels right.
8. 2018.
Hey! Yeah. So, me and Mel have known each other, officially, actually we talk about 8 years. But when we were younger, we used to be in a lot of programs together, so we'd, run into each other.
And our moms knew each other, too.
Yeah. Lettice and Lenny. But, so I'm joined by Mel, and today's topic, we're going to be getting into therapy and mental health. So, my first sort of thought is just demythifying therapy within the Black community, because I feel that a lot, not me specifically, well, yes and no, I feel that a lot of Black families growing up, it's whatever happens in the family stays within the family, and we deal with problems on our own. And I think you can do that to an extent, but then it gets to a point when trying to have that dialogue with members of your family becomes unhelpful and just sort of repetitive, and you have to go to an unbiased outside source.
Like a third party.
Exactly.
I feel like a lot of times in the Black community, they expect you to, figure things out on your own. So, going to therapy or trying to get some help can almost seem like some sort of defeat. And I feel like that's prevalent in the Black community, where it's if you have problems, you're supposed to figure them out yourself. You work harder, do more to just work on yourself. But I feel like therapy can be very important just because it's an outside perspective on things that you may not know. Just because a lot of times when we're dealing with family, we have love for them that's never gonna go away. So a lot of times we can excuse the behavior of our family members, but when you're talking to a therapist and they're actually that may not be what's supposed to happen, or that might be more troubling to you than you actually think it is.
Exactly.
And I feel that's why therapy is so important, because you can it takes away your biases because it's a neutral third party.
Yeah. I think sitting down and being able to tell sort of the story from your perspective, explaining exactly what happened, the way that you remember it, and then being able to talk to the person, and then hearing that, oh yeah, that's not normal. I think that's one of the most earth-shattering things that could possibly happen, right. Especially if you're used to being not stuck in a cycle, but you're just used to conversations going a very specific way. Because I remember growing up, I think once I hit 13, I genuinely was all right, I don't know how my relationship with my mom is going to get any better. I'm just completely over it. I don't really want to try and fix it or work on it, because there are just things I know cannot change, and I cannot change about her, but maybe there are some things I can figure out for myself to see if there's something that I'm doing, or if there's a way that I could improve myself to make the situation a little bit more bearable.
And also just finding ways to work with, the person that you, even if you're over, a relationship, or you feel you're over a situation because you can't change something about someone else, you can find ways to really make it work for yourself, just because, unless you fully cut off, your parents or your family members, they're always going to be in your life. So instead of seeing it as something, to avoid, you can just, handle it straight on and be okay, maybe a therapist can talk you through certain topics that you avoid when it's with your parents, or certain topics that actually you and your parent might think the same way on, so then talk about that, or your shared interests. And I feel a therapist can really help you navigate tough relationships, because they're able to focus on the positives versus the negatives, and use the positives to help you out with the relationship, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I feel therapy also, depending on the type of person you are, some people will be oh, therapy doesn't work for me, but sometimes I think it's figuring out what you need. Do you need an affirmation that the things you went through actually did happen that way? Were there outside factors that you hadn't considered because you were a child, or you just weren't necessarily paying attention to them? Or do you just need to have a conversation about things that happen just to try and understand it from a different perspective? I feel like personally I do all three. Like when I sit and talk to Lisa, if there's something very pressing going on, I'm like, Lisa, this one thing that's going on right now in my life is what's bothering me. But I feel like for the most part I'm talking about how I grew up in my relationship with my parents, specifically with my mom, because I just feel like that relationship is so much more complicated than my relationship with my dad. And I don't think a lot of people, or I think people in the Black community understand it, but they don't necessarily delve into it. But the relationship between a Black mother and her Black daughter has so many layers and levels to it that you might not necessarily get to in either your mom's lifetime, your own, or even if you decide to have kids like that lifetime either. You just have to sit and be very conscious and aware of the things that are going on between you and why your mom is the way that she is, and then how that shapes you.
I think also, like, even when I talk to my therapist, he's always like, a lot of times when I talk about my family, he's like, because I feel like I can sort of play a role where I have to do a lot of, like, the peacemaking in my family. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I talk about the effects that has on, like, my brother or my mother or my dad. Mm-hmm. And he's like, but what about you? Like, I feel like it's important to have, like, just a therapist, because they're, like, in therapy is always going to be about you. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's important, especially for Black women, because we're expected to, like take care of everyone else. So we don't often have someone who's going to ask you, like, what about you? Like, how is this impacting you on the day-to-day basis? And, like, some people would argue, like, that it makes you, like, a bit more selfish, but it also just makes you more self-aware. True. Like, you do need to put yourself first in certain situations, especially because the world is going to keep expecting you to, like, carry all of these weights. Mm-hmm. So, like, you do need to think about yourself and not just, like, solely focus on the people around you. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's why it's good to have a therapist to talk to about family situations, especially if your family's, like, going through a lot. Like, you need to, like, learn how to put yourself first, and sometimes we can be blinded by the fact that we love, like, our family, but, like, you can love someone and still, like, set boundaries with them.
True. This is very true. I hate when Lisa's, so I'll sit down on her couch, and she always tells me about my body language. She's like, okay, you're sitting and your legs are crossed, so there's something you want to tell me, but you haven't told me yet. And I'm like, I just sat down. Like, I literally just came into the office, you're already reading me for filth. And so I'll sit there, and then I'll maybe explain the situation, and Lisa will go, and how did that make you feel? And that lady makes me sit in silence and actually think about it, because I'm so quick to sort of go, oh, well, it didn't bother me that much. Because realistically, like, whenever I feel a very strong emotion, I try not to dwell on it, or it doesn't necessarily process in that moment, because I just feel like I'm not justified to, be sad or be angry or be upset, because I'm just like, I'm a relatively understanding person, so when I have these emotions, to me they feel irrational, so I don't necessarily express them in the moment. And Lisa was like, this is how they come up later on, and then because you're not saying anything, or because you're not letting yourself feel the emotions will come out in other situations where it's not necessarily related to the thing that just happened.
Right. I think also a lot of people just, like, can just confide in anybody. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like therapy is important because it's an outlet for you to learn more about yourself and, like, have someone who's actually going to listen to you and give you good advice. Like, it's okay to go to your friends for certain situations, but you can't just, like, put all of your, like, trauma and all of your stress and your worries and your, like, everyday struggles onto your friends, because that does get taxing and tiring for the other person. It does. So I feel like a lot of people, they're just like, oh, I just need, like, to call a friend and vent. And, like, that's okay from time to time, but if you're doing it, like, every day, like, you gotta just you low-key need to seek it. Just seek therapy. Yes. Like, it's okay. Like, it's not, people find it scary. I don't know if they find it scary or, like, what prevents people from going to therapy, but it's, like, it's really different than how most people think it is.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are scared to be vulnerable, and they're scared to talk about themselves or even see themselves in a different light, because obviously everyone is like, no, I feel justified. I feel right in this situation. And what if you were wrong? Right. And what if your therapist told you were wrong? Would you be okay with that? So I've been sort of thinking about that too. But when it comes to friends, I think as a person who's pretty empathetic, and I don't mind, like, listening to, like, let's say, like, a random story. Like, you don't call your friends every day, but when you do talk to them, they sort of just let you know all of the things that have been going on. And sometimes they want advice, and then other times they just want you to listen. But if you feel that you're taking in more information than you can sort of get off of yourself, it becomes an emotional tax. It becomes emotionally taxing, because you're dealing with not only your own things, but you're also thinking about your friends, especially if you care about them and if you're relatively close to them, and the situation isn't necessarily, I mean, obviously it's uncomfortable because they brought it to you, but if it's something that is really bothering your friend, then it's going to bother you inherently because they told you about it.
I think also just, like, some people might be scared to go to therapy because they think that their problems aren't big enough.
Yeah.
So they're like, or they think that therapy is only for people who are, like, have certain mental health issues, and they don't want to admit to themselves that they have mental health issues. But therapy can also just help you, like, support you with your everyday things that are going on. Like, you don't need to have, like, bipolar or borderline or something like that in order to get therapy. Like, you can be, like, what we call quote-unquote normal or, like, neurotypical or something like that, and still go to therapy just to help you with your day-to-day life. Just because, like, sometimes I be walking into my therapist's office and I have a million things to talk about. And sometimes I go into my therapist's office and I really don't have anything to talk about, so I just, like, vent about, like, what's going on at debate or something like that. You know, like, it can be really small things. So I, like, and I wouldn't say to view your therapist as a friend, but view your therapist as someone who you can, like, just talk to, like, just someone to talk to who is, like, because it's honestly, therapy, when it comes down to it, is really someone, it's like a mental health expert at your disposal. You know what I'm saying?
Literally.
So it's like, anytime you need, like, help or guidance, like, a therapist can really help you with that. You don't need to have, like, huge problems that you need to overcome or work through. You can just, like, come as you are, honestly.
And the other way I like to look at it, too, is they're there to literally be helpful. They're there to look at whatever it is that you bring in, whether that be childhood trauma or literally you tripped and fell down the stairs yesterday. Like, they're there to help you look at the situation. If you want to analyze it and be like, well, how did this make you feel? And how do you think this changed you as a person? Or how do you feel that you as a person and how you are would react to the situation if X, Y, and Z were different? So I think it's a whole bunch of things like that. And sometimes I tend to minimize my problems because obviously everyone has problems. Everyone has things going on. Yes, it can always be worse. But I use it can always be worse in quite literally every scenario I possibly can. So then when it comes to a point in time when I have to sit down and explain something and I'm sort of going through the motions of it, I'm like, oh, but it's not that big of a deal. And it's like, okay, but this made you feel a specific way. Like, this, you're talking about this situation because it brought out an emotion that was serious enough for you to still be thinking about it after the fact. Alright, so today we're going to be identifying some dysfunctional family roles. This is from Psychology Today. So sometimes, not all the time, but family trauma or just things that happen within your family can lead you to be the way that you are. So I'm just going to take you through a few of them. And Psychology Today lists 8. So the first would be the golden child. So this is considered the child who can do no wrong. The parents are always praising them, you know, using them as an example. The second would be the hero. This is the one who, quote unquote, proves to the rest of the world that the family is all right. There's nothing going on. There's nothing wrong. Everything is exactly the way it should be. There's also the mascot. This is the one who diffuses conflict in the family. So think about this person who's considered the mascot as sort of the middleman. The fourth would be the identified patient. This is the person who's frequently the family's quote-unquote reason for going to therapy. They're often the family's black sheep. So this is someone who all of their problems, all of their issues, or the things that the family believes are issues, this is what they blame the family dynamic on. There's also the scapegoat, which is also considered the person who's the black sheep or the outlier in the family. They're different. So they're similar to the identified patient in the way that the family uses them sort of as an excuse for why they are the way that they are, but the scapegoat specifically has an identified problem within the family, and the scapegoat is just a person that the family blames. The fifth would be the lost child. This is the one trying to survive unnoticed, because getting noticed means getting in trouble or being in the limelight. In adulthood, this person will maintain that feeling of being lost and unseen, often having low self-esteem or self-worth. They will struggle to make decisions and constantly have feelings of invisibility or not feeling seen. The seventh would be the enabler or the caretaker. This is the person who maintains the look or appearance of normalcy within the family. They continue trying to fix others and have an overall strong sense of responsibility and ownership over the problems of others. So the enabler and the caretaker sort of go hand in hand with the hero, and the identified patient and the scapegoat also go hand in hand as well. The last would be the parentified child. This is the one who will take the role of the other spouse in an absence of a healthy caretaker relationship. They struggle with boundaries and base their self-worth on their partner's or others' approval. So this is someone who often does things not necessarily to get not to get praise for what they do, but to get affirmation that they're doing the right thing and they're doing a good job, and this is what they're supposed to be doing because they're being helpful. They're, able to take care of those around them. I think another important thing to think about is that as Black women, as young Black women, as young adults in college, there are outside factors. We're basically learning to live life, kind of, sort of, in the context of getting an education at the same time of being able to balance social and extracurricular activities. And I think with that being said, moving into like adult careers or just moving into regular society, there are going to be other outside forces that are going to be pushing you in different ways, and I think therapy is another way for you to have a healthy outlet to talk about the frustrations that might be going on in your day-to-day life.
I think also it's important to just like schedule out some time for yourself, and I feel like therapy can serve as that time, just because like especially me and KJ, like, we got a lot of stuff to do. There are not enough. There's simply not enough hours in the day. So it's like, if I need the time to focus on self-care, like, I literally have to think about, like, look at my schedule, like, when, if I can't even, like, chill on the weekends, I have debate tournaments, or, like, during the day, it's, like, I can't even have a chill evening, because it's, like, I have meetings and work and, like, practice, and, like, there's all sorts of things I need to do, so even just having the time, like, once every 2 weeks to just sit down with someone and talk about, like, myself, that can just be relaxing, especially, like, I like to have therapy in the mornings.
That's valid.
Because, like, it's, like, I get to learn a little bit about myself and then take what I've learned and use it throughout the day.
Yes. Okay,
so it stays fresh, right? So, like, I just feel like you need to, even if it's not therapy, but just, like, take some time and schedule some time to just work on you. Whether that just be, like, sitting and relaxing or, like, doing something to take care of yourself, like a face mask or just some type of self-care, I feel like is very important, especially when you have a busy schedule. It's easy to forget about it.
True.
But to just prioritize yourself in some sort of way is very, like, important, I feel like, for Black women.
Yeah. And therapy is definitely a way to do that. Personally, my hair takes me, like, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to do in total. So that's from starting with washing and ending with, like, retwisting and then styling. Like, I literally did it yesterday. I was up till almost 3 a.m. doing my hair. But it was a designated time for me to just watch my show, sit down, and do my hair and not have to worry about the projects that I have due or the work that I have to do this upcoming week, because I knew that I already set aside time Friday and Saturday morning to do it. So then Saturday night I was like, okay, I can sit down and relax and just take a breath. And I think that's another thing that therapy allows you to do too, is you literally, the hour is yours. If you just want to sit down and color for that hour and not talk about anything, you can do that.
You should do that.
Matter of fact, I want to do that.
Yeah. I think also another important thing is sleep.
Yes.
Like, oh my god, if I have one, like, piece of advice for anyone, like, prioritize your sleep schedule.
Yes.
I swear that is the only thing that, like, keeps me going, is the fact that, like, I try to be asleep before, like, 1 p.m. Not 1 p.m. 1
p.m.
Yeah, I try to be asleep before 1 p.m. No, I try to be asleep before, like, 1 a.m. And that's only because I wake up, like, 8 to 9 on normal days. If I was waking up at, like, 7 or 8, I would try to be I try to get 7 hours of sleep a night, and I feel like that's so important because I feel like a lot of times, even when we just, like, just go through the motions of our day and they're like, I want to relax, like, sleep is also relaxation. So, like, I feel like I saw this thing on, like, Instagram that was talking about, like, revenge bedtime procrastination. Ooh. Which is basically, like, when you have a lot of things to do during the day, you tend to, like, stay up at night and sort of, like, try to, like, have revenge. So, like, you can have,
my business?
yeah, like, have time for yourself. So whether that's, like, staying up to watch a show or staying up to, like, scroll on TikTok or something like that, like, anything that keeps you up, like, just remember that sleep is also relaxation. So if you literally get home from a long day and you, like, eat dinner, take a shower, and then immediately go to sleep, like, that's still good. Like, that's just as good as, like, that is a form of self-care to me.
Literally. That's, personally, I tell myself my homework cutoff time is 10 p.m. That's on days when I get in late at, like, 7, 8 o'clock. That's on days when I get in early, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, something like that. My homework cutoff time is 10 o'clock. If I'm working on a new active assignment that is not due the next day, 10 p.m. is the cutoff time. If I'm wrapping up something, I'm done between 10 and 10:30.
Right.
If it's a project, sometimes if I'm in a really good groove, I'll let myself sort of get carried away. But it depends on the day of the week that it is, because some mornings I have to wake up early either for physical therapy or I have to wake up early because I have an early class or I have work. If I have to wake up early, that homework time is getting cut off. Because staying up to finish an assignment, staying up to cram, that actually backsets you. Like, I pinky promise you, you will not remember more information if you stay up to cram and then go to your exam versus doing as much as you can the night before, putting it away, and then going to sleep.
Right, exactly.
Personally, I feel like I don't get 24 hours in a day. I feel like I get maybe 12. Maybe, actually, matter of fact, I get 18. I get 18 hours in a day because the full 24, I think I see the next day every single day, which I know y'all are probably like, what is she talking about? So the revenge bedtime procrastination thing, I'm 100%, I definitely do that, because if I'm getting back, let's say I get back at 7 o'clock. No, actually, let's say I get back at 8:30 because I ate dinner and I took the bus. Now I have 30 minutes to try and get myself together. It's 9 o'clock. I start an assignment, I get distracted, I go on my phone, it's 9:30. I go back to my assignment, I get distracted, go on my phone again, it's 10 o'clock. Then I go back to doing my assignment, I finish it, it's 10:30. Now I'm like, okay, well, I've been sitting at my desk, I want to lay down in my bed. So now I lay down in my bed, and it's 10:30, then it's 11:15, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to take a shower. I prepare to take a shower. It's 11:30. Let's say I finish on my bedtime routine by 12. I'm like, okay, well, I barely had time to be on my phone and be in my bed. So now I'm up, it's 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock, 1:30, you know? So
yeah, exactly.
I just end up staying up later than I intend to, but I definitely do still get really good sleep. Like, freshman and sophomore year, I was not sleeping. And sleep is restorative, and it literally heals your body, and you need sleep in order to feel better the next day. As much as people talk about, oh, like, well, I only have 4 hours of sleep, now I feel fine. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
No,
bro.
you don't.
And you may not see it, but your body doesn't feel fine for
exactly. Your body feels it that day, and then your mind will feel it the day after that. Yeah. I pinky promise you that. And,
they talk about how, like, sleep is, like, not, like, lack of sleep is literally worse than, like, binge drinking or smoking, like, for, like, just because you're supposed to get sleep so your brain can fix itself, like, get all your memories together, like, heal your body, like, and so, especially if you're not sleeping, like, over time, like, it's gonna affect, like, how much you remember of your day, just, like, things like that, like, your ability to just wake up, your immune system can't work as easily, then you, like, get sicker faster and for longer and more often, like, things like that. Like, you really need to sleep so your body can perform to, like, its maximum capacity, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Also, if your body's telling you to take a nap, take the nap. Take the nap. You guys, I took a 4-hour nap the other day.
I took a 4-hour nap yesterday.
Yep. And you know what? I laid down and I was like, I listened to my body. I was doing an assignment and I started to get tired. There's no reason for me to try and work through an assignment and I'm exhausted.
No.
I lay down, I take my nap. I wake up 45 minutes later because normally I try to take a nap for no longer than an hour. Yeah. But I got up and I was like, I still feel kind of weird. Don't like how my body feels, so I'm going to go back to sleep. And then I slept for an additional 3 hours. But all of this, therapy is a form of self-care, taking care of your mind, taking care of your body. All of these things are intertwined. And I think when someone hears the word therapy, they're like, oh, well, I have to sit in, like, a cushiony chair across from a person with a notebook, and they have to write down things about what's going wrong in my life. Not necessarily. That's not everyone's story. Not everyone has some deep-seated family trauma. You could quite literally be, let's say you had the perfect childhood and you grew up fine and nothing was particularly traumatizing, and that is all coming from a place of privilege to be able to do that. But if you understand that you're coming from a place of privilege, that's not to say that you don't still have things you need to go to therapy about.
Right. I think that, like, the relationship between Black daughters and Black mothers is so complex, and I feel like it's something that, like, we don't talk about it enough. I feel like growing up, I was always, like, much more closer, like, with my dad than my mom. And I feel like sometimes, like, maybe my mom didn't, like, see me enough, or she was, like, more worried about, like, my little brother or stuff like that. And she just always had, like, a lot going on. Like, she's a Black woman. Like, Black women always have a lot going on. Like, always a lot going on. So, like, to be emotionally, like, fully emotionally there for your daughter, I feel like can be very hard. Or just for, like, your children in general. So, a lot of times, like, I felt like I would need to, like, carry the burden for my mom and, like, help her out with stuff, which I was always willing to do. But I feel like because of that, maybe, like, growing up, I didn't really think about what my needs were and making sure that I had my needs met, which is why a lot of times, like, I feel like whenever someone asks me to do something for them or to help them, like, my first thought is always, like, how can I make this happen? But just in recent years, especially, I've been thinking about, like, do I have, like, the wherewithal to do this? Do I have time to, like, drop someone off at, like, a station that's, like, maybe 45 minutes away? Like, usually I'd, like, let me, like, move my schedule around so I can make time for you. But it's also, like, maybe that I should be focusing on taking time for myself. And I feel like just as, like, dealing with my mom, I feel like I've kind of normalized putting myself, like, last. And I feel like maybe I don't just know myself enough. So then when I go into therapy, like, my therapist is always like, do you have enough time? Like, what are you doing to support yourself? And I feel like that's, like, the question that, like, all Black women should be asking themselves. Like, at least on a weekly basis, you should be asking yourself, like, what am I doing for me? And not just before the therapy appointment or after the therapy appointment or during the therapy appointment. You should be asking yourself, like, what can I do for me, like, all the time?
Very loud, very correct, though. I could literally talk about Black mothers and their daughters for probably the rest of my life, but in terms of my sort of understanding going into therapy, I was like, okay, because originally, like I said, I hit 13, I was like, this is not where I want it to be, but I don't know if it can get better. Then I hit junior year of high school, and I was like, I need help.
Yeah.
Like, I told my parents, I said, I need help. I need to talk to somebody. Y'all need to figure this out, because I feel like I'm losing my mind. So I started going to therapy my junior year of high school, and for the most part, high school was just, or when I was going to therapy in high school, it was just getting through being in the house. And getting through sort of the daily life of being a junior and then preparing for college and things like that. So then when I got to my senior year, I was like, okay, I can take a break from therapy because my therapist was transitioning to work in a different sector and I was getting ready to move to college. I was like, this might be a good time to see, sort of how I might have improved, where my mind is at now, how I will be able to, sort of function in the college realm without having a therapist at home. So I came to college.
Ooh.
And then fall semester happened. Freshman year fall semester is the most life-changing semester you could ever go through in your college career, and I pinky promise you that. All of the personal relationship, you guys,
it's all happening.
Everything that you could possibly think could happen your freshman fall semester as a young Black woman at a PWI is exactly what happened to me. And I got to November, I got to my Thanksgiving break, and I said, yeah, no, I need to see someone ASAP. Because I did take the time to see how I was doing, and Mama's not doing so hot. So, right back to therapy I went. So, I went to CCPH, which is our on-campus Center for Counseling and Psychological Health.
Yep.
Yes. So that's how I met Lisa, but essentially you can schedule a 15-minute session with one of the receptionists, and they sort of walk you through what CCPH does, what you're looking for, what you want to get out of therapy, or just having repeated appointments. And then they assign me with Lisa. And we have been together since. And I'm now going into my... Well, after this comes out, it'll probably be going into my senior fall, which is insane, because I feel like I just got here. But understanding that it is okay to take gaps and sort of see where you're at mentally, because you're not necessarily going to be in therapy for the rest of your life. Like, there are seasons of your life where you know, okay, this is what I need to do. Therapy helped me figure out I needed medication, or therapy helped me figure out I need to change my environment. Therapy helped me figure out I need to set boundaries with specific people. And sometimes getting these, I wouldn't say solutions because life is ever changing, but getting these sort of building blocks in place to be able to move forward in life, and eventually you can either add on to them, or those can just be the base things that you have. But being open enough to try something, and even if it doesn't work out, you can either try it again with someone different, or you could just pivot to something new altogether.
Yeah, and I feel like therapy can be more accessible than we actually think. Like, there are so many different types of therapists. Like, even if you go online, like, if you want a black therapist, if you want a female therapist, if you want a therapist that's well-versed in, like, LGBTQ issues, one that's good with, like, supporting people through grief or addiction, like, there's so many, like, therapy is not just, like, someone sitting in a room with a notepad. Like, these are actual human beings as well, with their own stories, with their own backgrounds, like, and some of them may match, like, what your history is more.
Exactly.
So I feel like it's very important, like, your first therapy experience can change your views on therapy, whether you're going to have, like, a therapist that you may not really like, or just, like, a therapist who you don't think that you can be vulnerable around. Like, it's very important to find that person who's actually going to, like, help you, and you think that you can be comfortable and vulnerable around, besides just, like, a random person. So I feel like when you're looking for a therapist, be very specific, and be, like, as tough as possible. Like, you should be Harvard, and these people are, like, the applicants. Like, you don't, like, you need to be running a strict program when it comes to finding a therapist.
Very, very strict. You're not just letting anyone just sort of sit there, especially if you feel that you can't get vulnerable with your therapist, and that's something that you're looking to do in your sessions. It's going to be hard to do that if you don't like your therapist, or if you feel that they don't have similar experiences as you. Like, my first therapist, she was a Latinx woman, and my mom was like, when you get a therapist and when you get a doctor, or where you have someone that's taking care of you, you should be looking for a black caregiver, or a black doctor, black dentist, you know, things like that. And I never understood the importance of that, but when it comes to inclusion and just having someone who looks like you in a room, even if they could have severely different life experiences than you, they're still black. So at the end of the day, you have one thing in common, and being able to have that shared experience of being in a specific profession, or just being in this country as a black person, is something that the both of you can talk about. And even now, like, Lisa's not black, but I still feel that I can talk to her about sort of things that are going on that maybe only the black community would understand, but that's because she's taken the time to get to know me, and she understands the nuances of my life and what I mean about very specific things. Not to say that a black therapist wouldn't be nice, obviously I'm not saying that, but I think that when you find someone that you click with and that it makes sense, sometimes you don't necessarily have to question that, and not everyone has to be exactly who you are in a reflection, if that makes sense.
I definitely agree with this. Like, my therapist is black, but he's a black man. And so sometimes when I'm talking about, like, my relationship with my mom, or, like, being a black woman, like, I'm not to say that he doesn't, like, there's no way that he's going to, like, understand on a first-person level, but he's married to a black woman, and his mom's a black woman. Like, so he definitely, like, knows what I'm talking about. So just finding someone who, like, they don't need to necessarily be, like, exactly your demographic and exactly you to a T, but just someone who knows how to support you, I feel like, is the most important part. But just, like, also there's different, like, approaches to therapy as well. I feel like for me, just because a lot of the trauma that, like, I went through when I was younger, especially growing up in a I don't know how to explain it, but like a therapy environment. Like my mom is a licensed social worker. My aunt is a licensed social worker. They have degrees in like psychology and like things like that. So I always grew up kind of like trying to like know how to understand myself and talking to my mom. And she's like, this is how you can understand yourself. And because of that, when I'm like talking with a therapist, like words aren't always enough because I tend to like know what's going on with myself. So like sometimes, like even my therapist now, he's like, it's good to talk to you, and like I do want to do like check-ins and stuff as well, and I want you to come to me about whatever, but I think you also may need to consider doing like somatic therapy, which is like getting your nervous system together and things like that. Ooh. Because like sometimes it's not just like, especially if you're someone who's more self-aware, you may not need like talk therapy. You may need to do something that like helps your nervous system or helps you calm down when you're facing stress. And so like there are so many different approaches to therapy that you can consider. And I feel like that's like just knowing what kind of therapy you need or would benefit you. Like that's what it's all about. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Because they're just so genuinely, there's something for everyone. You just have to be willing to look and experiment and figure out what works and what doesn't work. Hi, listeners. Thank you so much for your time and dedication in listening to Word to Us, bringing Black first-generation women into a form of accessible media. I was able to present my podcast at the Massachusetts Undergraduate Conference toward the end of this semester, wrapping my junior year up. Word to Us wouldn't have been possible without the Rise Diversity Fellowship under the guidance of Dr. Felicia Griffin-Fennell and the other fellows in my cohort, plus the support from my friends and family. Thank you all for the support and comments. I see and appreciate every single one. Feel free to share this podcast with whoever you think would benefit from Word to Us, and I will be back soon. Let me know if there are any topics that you would like me to cover, taboo, uncomfortable, or otherwise. I love you all, and please stay safe. Peace and love, Kyla-Journey.